2x2, 7 rows deep.
And rolling up to the start-finish line. It looks like Asher going a little bit off track as the inside.
As they can. Saber making an amazing dive into turn 1, and electroshocks off. Eggful gets the move.
But MNU trying to take a move.
Big contact from 5 different punches.
Big incident with Snowdog, our leader.
As we head into town row, it's a big crash. It's a big crash between the two title contenders.
The lights are shining bright in Belgium tonight. We have arrived to the final round of our GT4 Season 4 Championship here at Zolder. Several championship titles are at stake in this night race for an epic final showdown. We have competitions in overall, in gold, in silver. It's only the AMP championship fight that's been completely locked at this point, so it's going to be an absolute stronger race coming up tonight.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to a exciting event to come. Zolder always filled with chaos and challenges as you basically risk every single corner around the curb. So see which one of our drivers have the most confidence, who has the most composure as we go to fill out the final round of this championship.
Yeah, it's going to be an absolutely tight fight for sure here, because I've been looking at these tight points very closely. There's only 2 points separating the Silver Championship title contenders here. It's going to be Blade, Wolf, Kagekyo, and Oras Volbest here. It's going to be one very exciting fight to be had there. And there's also going to be another very close fight between our gold drivers of Tyler Van Beek and Daniel Tabler. There are only going to be a couple of points separated between them as well, though Tyler Van Beek does hold the advantage in that gold class here. But the big fight, that's going to be the overall fight here, because we now have Luis Alfonso, the favorite into this round here, with a big 9-point lead to their other competitors going up into this final round here. But that does not mean that they have secured the title yet. It could be if there's an incident going to be happening, if they spin out on the formation lap here, or to have some other accident, that's going to be throwing this championship fight wide open and going to be giving a chance for their competitors, Daniel Tabler and Tyler Van Beek, to gain not only the gold title, but also the overall title.
Yeah, well, let's hope we don't have a spin out on the formation lap. That would probably be the most embarrassing of the results that we could have. But I mean, Luis Alfonso has been proving to have a very, very strong season so far. So the limited mistakes and the good showings that they have had every single round have been really all you can ask for out of a championship, and a big step up from the LMU championship that we have recently deserted and now are about to finish out the next championship in this GT4 car. So I think Lewis very pleased with the season that they've had so far, but of course we still have one final hurdle to get over.
One final hurdle and one final track, and that's going to be the Zolder track. That is going to be one of our most technical tracks on this calendar yet to this point, because Ocean Park was pretty tight, pretty technical there, and it also had a lot of the track limits there with only being grass there. But it's a pretty big difference in Zolder, where the track limits are gigantic sausage curbs. We can see right here on Tyler Van Beek's onboard here, this huge sausage curbs going up into this little big chicane section here, where you can easily, in an off drive, you might go a little bit wider into this section here, where you can unleash the power onto the main straight. So lots of chicanes, lots of overtaking opportunities here, especially going into that turn 6 chicane. There could be some big incidents happening on the formation lap or on the start of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of chaos that happens from turn 1. Of course, turn 5, that first chicane, it's really 2 big choke points in this track. Of course, everyone wants to jockey for position and make sure they have every part of the track as possible. And so we do see people get their elbows out here. And it's a fairly simple track, as much it is technically challenging. So it means it produces good racing. It allows the cars to go side by side a little bit more. But it does also require a little bit of aggression from our drivers to make any kind of move happen.
For sure, indeed. Now we have about 5 minutes left on our practice session here. And looking at our time so far, Tyler Van Beek is holding on a pretty good advantage, currently holding a best lap time of a 36.482. When surprisingly enough, it's again our Super Silver, or as Focus here, sitting at a 36.695 here. So with how big of an advantage they're currently holding on the lap time that Playful Kakegyo has, over a second off from our Focus here, this could already be determined the championship fight for silver.
Yeah, it definitely could, and then it could also be a good message for Tyler Van Beek, who has been an outside chance at the overall championship, I want to say. They aren't really that distant, but with all the drop rounds and everything, they do need a very, very good effort, and pretty much, I would say they have to win this race, and Luis Alfonso has to have quite a bad race, but they are still in with the shout. And while they're doing everything they can and is in their control during this round, to at least show that they have good pace during this practice session, and we'll see how Luis Alfonso responds as they jump up to P2. So we could have a Titanic battle. We could even have an incident, but I don't want to put anything in our driver's mouth or anything like that.
Speaking of our title fights, as we're going to be going into our full course yellow practice session here, as we always have here, is that I do not see Daniel Taberner in the server at all here. So just by absentia, by Daniel Taberner, the other contender for the gold class title here, I think this is just going to be granting the title immediately to Tyler Van Beek as long as they just finish the race here. Who knows here? But at this point, it's looking to be a very solid win for Tyler Van Beek, both in gold and potentially in overall as well here. So as a bit of a reminder here, I think if I have a quick look on my points tabulation sheets here, yes, indeed. Tyler Van Beek is currently sitting at 82 points to Luis Alfonso's 89 points here, so it's a pretty distinct advantage of 7 points here, but we're going to be watching very closely on that first lap here. We're going to be side by side going into that pretty tight left-hander turn 1 here, and with two cars fighting very much for a championship title in two different classes, I think there's going to be some elbows out moments happening soon.
Absolutely, and we've seen a couple drivers here join in the last couple seconds, actually. We picked up about 3 or 4 drivers since we jumped into the server on our side of things, so I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Taberner jumped in, but a little bit of a low turnout now, but it really is everyone starts to fight for their final positions in the championship. You mostly expect just your championship protagonists to be coming in and making that final shout for the last couple positions in the championship.
It's probably going to be a good fight for sure here, but now with only about a couple minutes left to go on our championship, I think we could have a quick refresher on our points situation going into the final round here.
So jumping into our points tabulations, Luis Alfonso, we've talked about our primary points leader, our overall points leader with 89 points to 82 to Tyler Van Beek, and those are going to be our real big championship protagonists coming in. Again, Tyler Van Beek with an outside shot. 7 points is not insurmountable, but not the easiest to close, especially with the fact that Luis Alfonso has come through with already 2 wins and 3 podiums on the season. Tyler Van Beek still looking for their first overall win in the season. Of course, Daniel Taberner or as Volpez filling out that 3rd and 4th spot, and Nico Lopez will be filling out that gold podium. Speaking of our gold points standings, jumping on over to those, Tyler Van Beek, who has been almost insurmountable in the gold championship with 101 points, followed by Daniel Taberner, who we do seem to be absent of, which will pretty much lock in Tyler Van Beek, and Inigo Lopez is going to be filling out that final gold position spot. A top 3 kind of in a league of their own in those gold standings. But one of the most impressive ones is going to be our silver standings. Our silver standings is pretty much a battle of whoever finishes first. Played with Kagekio, who is sitting with a 2-point gap to Orez Volpez with 2 wins, 5 podiums, and 1 pole position. Orez Volpez with 2 wins, 5 podiums and 2 pole positions. Pretty much one race position has separated the 2 of them, so it's whoever finishes in front between those 2 cars in this race will be clinching the provisional championship for that silver class. And then jumping into our AM class, speaking of clinched championships, Frey Fireblood with 5 wins to their name has effectively clinched that AM title, and they are now just waiting for that final round to close to be that champion-elect that they have been looking for the entire season. But do not appear to have Frey at this race, as they appear to be absent. So it'll be Wolf and Foxdale that will probably be chasing down our AM win, but they will have the challenges of George Shuarmi, alias Flynn, and a couple of our other AM drivers as well that are looking to just throw a little bit of a spanner in the works.
Yes, indeed. And the funny thing about Frey Fireblood, Fireball is that they actually have their birthday today. So first off, happy birthday to Fryer, the recently, well, almost recently elected AM champion title contender. So this is why they decided to not do this final race of the season here, because they wanted to just kind of show their cards, basically just lock out the championship ahead of time here with those dominant streak of 5 wins. Kind of a similar domination streak that I had all the way back in my first AM championship here. So definitely a very, very well deserved win for the other AM championship title holder.
Absolutely, and it's always nice to pick another title to your name, so congratulations to Frey. Again, our champion-elect just waiting for the season to end pretty much, so they've taken a much well-earned break, and happy birthday as well. As we roll through in our final laps of practice here, it's the timer hits 0. Just a couple of our drivers across the line. Wolf and Foxtail, I believe, will be one of our final drivers here to cross that line, and they will be as our session switches over to the qualifying session. So it will be a free-for-all qualifying session, as the race director has prompted in our driver's briefing. It is going to be all of our drivers out on track at the same time. Zolder will be a tight track, so this actually could result in some traffic issues and maybe some chaos. So it'll be an interesting one to look out, as it looks like Blade Wolf Kakakio has been the first one to sneak out of the pits. But a little bit of a shakeup as we roll through for our qualifying session this time out.
Yes, with how small a grid we're having tonight here, we decided to have a free-for-all qualifying instead of doing a split qualifying here. So there's going to be a bit more of an issue with traffic, especially with the slower AM and silver cars potentially getting in the way of our gold and pro class drivers here. But with Blade Wolf Kakakio now leading the pack here, I don't think there's going to be too much issue at the moment here. The track is pretty wide in Zolder, so there's going to be plenty of space for all of us to slot themselves into a nice bit of clean air and get away here. And there's not going to be that many long straights either, so you're not really incentivized to get really close to anybody's bump to try and get a draft on a long straight either.
No, not at all, but the slightly technical nature of these chicanes can build a quite significant pace spread, and it shows he's most confident with taking those curbs and those really inch-perfect, centimeter-perfect lines that determine how well you're able to roll the car through one of those chicanes of speed. But rolling through the final chicane here is going to be the 142 of Blade with Kakakyu, who's going to take us on board for the first qualifying session of the night and the first race under the lights during this GT4 season as we roll through onto the main straight. You head into turn 1 Ersta, which is going to be a very high speed sweeper, and a lot of cars just down one. In GT4s, it's going to be 2 gears. Pick up that apex very early, throttle, throw yourself all the way over that outside curb into turn 2, and really it's a long double right hander that opens into turn 3 of Canal Box, which is going to almost be the same exact corner. Heading into turn 4, Lucien Bianalbach, which is our most important corner heading into the chicane, and one of our passing opportunities. Very easy to get that corner wrong, drop a tire on the outside there, open up a passing opportunity into here, the Kleine chicane, which is going to be our turn 5. Really a lot of inside curb, pick up that outside curb, don't unsettle the car, keep that speed as high as possible as you head through turn 6, keeping the car all the way to the left-hand side, pinned hard on the brakes once those candy canes on the left appear. Inside, and then to the third apex of turn 7. All of this complex, one corner, picking up one final apex, 4 apexes, one corner, as you head down into the very long named turn 8. I will call it the hairpin for now, as you roll through a very late apex early on power into turn 9 of Jochen Rinbach, this little left-right chicane. It doesn't really see much action unless you're side-by-side into Jackie Ixbalk in our final corner here of another chicane of apexes, using all of that sausage curb all over the outside curbing there, and run the car out and use all of that space for the final run to the line. Looks like maybe a little bit of weak exit on that final run out, but a 137.7 will be our first lap to beat. And chasing them down in the background there, you can see our other championship protagonist of Oraz Volpez, who is trying to put their stamp into that pole position. But driver in pole position, who is Alfonso? Who else would you expect?
Very predictable qualifying so far, but I just want to give a bit of a highlight here to one of our core names. I think that's going to be turn 8. Do you know how to spell this corner? I don't know how to spell this core name. It's pretty long.
I was trying to avoid saying it, but Bodebehoud Speldbok, I'd have to guess.
Did you actually speak Dutch? You know how to spell that? Wow.
I'd have to take a guess with my limited German, but I don't know anything about Dutch, and I'm just using the phonetics that I do know to hope that I got close enough.
Well, hopefully we don't need to say that too many times. I think we just defer to be as turn 8 here. But now going back to our qualifying, it actually has now Tyler Van Beek inheriting the provisional pole position so far with a 36.0. So getting close to those 35 flats here, 35 lap times here already. And it's only about a tenth and a half off from Luis Alfonso here. So Tyler Van Beek is definitely trying their best to get ahead here. But just finishing ahead of Luis Alfonso, it's not going to be enough. They're going to have to have Luis Alfonso be much further down if they're going to have a chance at that overall title.
Yeah, we mentioned it. The championship is a little bit out of their control for that overall championship. Of course, they are in a very, very good position for the gold, but they need Luis Alfonso to have quite a ugly race. So we'll see. Luis Alfonso has been, for the most part, pretty bulletproof throughout this championship. Maybe not always taking the wins, but has always been up in the conversation from round one. So I think Tyler Van Beek will need some exceptional luck to be able to get something going. But of course, anything can happen. We've seen everything happen. We've seen drivers running out on the final corner on the final lap. We've seen incidents go all the ways to the stewards and get decided in the stewarding room and making sure that everything was run cleanly. So it's an interesting situation here. Of course, the race still needs to be run, and Tyler Van Beek, I think, really needs to do the best they can to put themselves in the best spot and win this race. But first step of that, pole position, right where they sit right now with an 8,000th gap to Luis Alfonso. It's the car behind.
We do hope the race is not going to be decided by a stewarding outcome post-race here, so hopefully everyone's going to be nice and clean here. But if I'm going to be having another look on my sheet here, if I'm correct, if Tyler Van Beek is going to be getting the pole position, fastest lap, and also wins the race, that's going to be giving them 26 points, which is going to be beating Luis Alfonso by a single point if Luis Alfonso finishes 4th or lower. So that is going to be the position that Tyler Van Beek is definitely going to be looking out for. But if Tyler Van Beek does not get the fastest lap throughout the race, because we do grant an extra point for the fastest lap throughout the race here, but not a point for pole position here. So in that scenario, Luis Alfonso would have to be 5th or lower in order for Tyler Van Beek to get that overall title in the end here. So it's within the realm of possibility here, but it's going to be certainly an uphill battle.
Absolutely an uphill battle on quite a flat track, you must say. So it'll be interesting to see. But of course, again, Tyler Van Beek, they have their destiny in their hand, and they're running it quite well right now. But Luis Alfonso has now decided to ramp up the difficulty a little bit, running in as a 135.8, the first lap in the 135. So Tyler Van Beek looking to respond. It will be an improvement, but it does look like a 135.957, so not enough of an improvement to put them into that pole position here. But if you look at the absolute rift that sits behind them, this is just kind of a two-horse race here. So Tyler Van Beek, I think, is really going to require some luck, maybe in lap traffic or something to bring them into the championship contention here if they need Luis Alfonso to sit all the way down in P4.
Speaking of our other championship fighters, we do have another update on our silver fight here, with Blade Wolf Kakagio being able to get the fastest lap time of the two silver contenders so far with a 36.5, and RS Lopez sitting a couple of tenths behind him at a 36.7. So this is looking to be pretty positive for Blade Wolf Kakagio at the moment here, and with about 12 minutes of the race to go here, there's not going to be too much of an improvement we're going to be seeing from RS Lopez here. So I think they're going to have to try and throw out maybe something more from their pocket here to try to get this off title fight to keep it alive here, because so far it seems like with the normally the Ginetta G55 that RS Lopez has always been used to driving here, they are very agile and very good in the corners here, which would make this track very much the preferred track for the Ginetta. But it seems like Blade Wolf has been able to find a bit more pace out of that Aston Martin here, despite its more lumbering, slower nature.
You say that, but the lightweight nature means it's more prone to being thrown around by the curbs, so possibly Blade Wolf just able to take a little bit more curb and a little bit more confidence through some of those chicanes, or they need to ride those sausage curbs. That could play that last little 2/10 difference between the two drivers here, but knowing Juarez Lopez, we've seen him charge through the field. Well, maybe not charge through the field, but charge in very, very high positions. We know the pace is in that Ginetta. It's just a matter of being able to finally lay it down, and I think Juarez will fight all the way to the end here. We saw them fight for the full 60 minutes in Oulton Park last time out here, so I think it is a bit of a downer to say that they are going to use everything that they have as they throw it all over the inside curb and the outside curb there of turn 5. Well, not exactly the fastest line, but did a good job of holding it together as we roll through Jesper Swingley now in the Porsche, the 279, looking to jump up onto a good position for the silver qualifying. Currently, they sit in the podium position of the silver class, sitting in P8, but a couple drivers in between them and Blade Kagakio and Horace Lopez.
That Kleine chicane of turn 5 is going to be absolutely quite dangerous for all of our competitors here. You can see that they're pretty gigantic both on the inside and the outside. Then the optimum line there is to try and cut that chicane for as deep as possible here. So that could indeed be the advantage that Playful has with their heavier, bit more lumbering Aston Martin V8 advantage, so they can just assault over that curve. And in fact, looking at my split times here, I do believe Sector 2 starts before the Kleine chicane, or just around the Kleine chicane here. And Playful Kakeo does hold a marginally faster Sector 2 time here so far, so this could be the advantage they're looking for here. We're now going to be watching on board with our still national driver, Elias Finley here, who is all the way up here in the silver fight actually here, with only about a half a second off from the silver fight here. So they're certainly showing their potential future class here, because we have not yet assigned them a class here. So despite them showing as red on our graphics here, they are indeed actually a national level drivers. So well, they're definitely trying to stake their claim in seeing like we're showing what kind of a base class they should be. And I think at the end of the race, it's going to be in silver.
Yeah, and of course that is all for the staff and stewarding to decide, but Elias Flynn has definitely staked their claim to put themselves in one of the higher up classes. It's not a matter of coming in and being off the back of the pack, and it's like, all right, we'll go on and build up your pace over time and grind through the classes. I think Elias has definitely done a good statement and making sure that they at minimum get silver. I could even see an argument going into gold, but I think it's a matter of seeing how they're able to do in all the other classes. But it's a very, very good championship challenge from them. Although you don't get any points in national, they have definitely made a bit of a statement with the results that they have been able to put themselves into, thinking of like Bathurst and so on.
Absolutely, indeed. And looking at our current qualifying battles, nobody has been improving. In fact, everybody from P1s all the way down to P7 is not on a valid lap at the moment here, or they have an invalid lap here. So this is going to be the other big challenge with the final 10 minutes of our qualifying session. It's going to be track limits, because you do need to be cutting those chicanes really deep, especially got to be that entire turn 7 complex. I guess you would call it the first part of turn 7 with those left-right chicanes there. You can get a lot of time from cutting one quarter really deep here, but it's also going to be really easy to just cut a bit too deep into that chicane here, invalidating your lap time, which I think is what happened to pretty much all of our drivers in the top 7 here. So I think most of our drivers have been able to find most of their pace here, so that's going to be down to those really marginal small improvements, a 10th here, a 10th there, getting a bit of a better exit in some of the corners here. So it's going to be a very tense fight here, but we're going to be watching now. It seems like Tyler Van Beek has been able to find a bit more pace from their own car here, sitting on quite a big improvement, but they are actually on an invalid lap at the moment here. So definitely still more pace to be found from all of our competitors, even with 7 minutes to go.
Absolutely. And from what I'm seeing on my timing page, I think a lot of our drivers actually came in at that 10-minute mark and are going for a second bite at the cherry and trying to get some brand new tires, going through that warm-up phase again, although our GT4 tires don't tend to fall off that much. Of course, any extra comfort that you can get is, well, when the gaps and the margins are so low at only 85 thousandths of a second between Tyler Van Beek and Luis Alfonso, and you look at the rest of the grid and there's multiple instances of less than a 10th or 2/10 gap. So any amount of comfort that you can find will give you a little bit more pace, a little bit more positions. Well, and then of course go ahead and take it. So I believe that we're going to be seeing some more fast lap times coming here in the next couple of laps as we see Bleo Kagakio coming across. Not an improvement on their lap, but looking to start that challenge up the grid. Currently sitting in that overall podium as a silver car. Quite impressive, but it's a matter of, are they able to close that gap to Tyler Van Beek? And of course, their challenger behind.
It's still going to be down to those small incremental improvements on these different corners here. We're already seeing Blade Kagakio quite a bit down on their first sector here. Already 2-3 going down to this back straight here towards the Kleine chicane here. But behind them, that's going to be Oris Phobos having a bit of an improvement of their own, sitting just about neutral on their own lap time. I did see a flash of green on the lap time, so definitely everybody's pushing here. And actually, we did miss also Inigo Lopez finally getting up into that gold fight there, getting a 36.5, a couple of tenths off from the leading time of Tyler Van Beek here. And speaking of our gold title, I think we forgot to mention during our early party is that Daniel Tabera is indeed not going to be competing in this fight here because they are unfortunately ill. So hopefully Daniel Tabera also gets better soon, and they're going to be just settling back with maybe some nice cup of tea and watching this very exciting battle happening here because we're again. There's got to be only a 2-point difference here between our competitors here, so it's just going to be down to who wins, I'd say, because I don't think the other silver drivers who we see down here with just between the Quick Fries and Jax Wilson and Kona Ho, I don't think they're going to be much in the way of these two front-running silvers.
No, I think it really is just a matter of who wins this dogfight between the two of them. Inigo Lopez stepping in, kind of just demoting Blade Wolf off of that overall podium, but with only 18 thousandths of a second, I believe that you could sneeze and find that lap time as long as you're close enough to your optimal. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes as Blade Wolf is rolling through the turn 2-3 complex. Those outside serrated curbs there, they look almost like blocks sticking out of the curb. Those can also invalidate your lap time. If you actually want to use a little bit of those, just kind of clip the first row of them to really maximize the track and know that you had a very good exit. But those also very, very guilty of causing a lot of off tracks and invalidations if you use a little bit too much of them. So I see a lot of our drivers not really using a ton of those, and honestly, it is definitely a comfort thing to stay away from those curves. They really are quite detrimental to your lap time if you don't run them right, as it looks like the Alpine of Quick to Freeze looking like they're just clipping the inside edge of them. But they are actually already on an improvement after just setting a lap time fast for P7, maybe looking like they might make a charge for P6. Ooh, and a little bit of gravel on the outside there. That's going to cost them a lot of time on the run down to the Kleinis chicane, and I don't think this will be an improvement after that.
Yeah, that exit of turn 4 towards the Kleinis chicane, that's going to be a very important one because the runoff on the outside of turn 4 is going to be just gravel. So if you push a bit too much on that exit curve, you're going to be going on the gravel, you're going to be losing all that speed on that very, very long straight down to Kleinis chicane here. We already saw with Quick to Price there, they had a pretty good marginal improvement going into this game, but as soon as they dipped their wheel on that gravel, they just lost all the advantage they can here, so they're going to have to go around for another lap of improvement here. But somebody who is currently improving, that's going to be Luis Alfonso, currently sitting about a 10th improvement. That's just a shy couple hundreds off from a 10th improvement here. Now going for these final chicane here that Jackie Xboxed, I guess you would call it here. Getting a bit more of a bitter launch here, still sitting about only about a half 10th improvement, so that's going to be still more of a gap here, and I feel that this looks like Tyler Van Beek has decided to not do any more running here because they're currently in the pits, so it seems like they just thought that this is going to be the maximum they can get from their car.
Absolutely. So it looks like it is going to be a matter of doing it in the race, if I had to say anything. And well, we saw the challenges that Orez had last time in Olton Park, so I think we're set up for a good event.
Yes, for sure here, but they're going to be still the qualified left to go here with again very deep on the chicane, which is actually going to be invalidating the lap time so far here. It seems like everybody has got their fastest laps in the silver class in the first half of the qualifying session here, because with about 2.5 minutes left to go here, nobody's still been improving their lap times at all here, which I feel like it's going to be going to show that you just trying to find those smart improvements in every single corner here, and the more you push, then more risk you're going to be getting invalidated in your lap time, which has happened to now Blade Wolf, now to Aura. So we're going to be going over to our other Aston Martin driver here. That's going to be George Rami, one of our newer Garage 42 drivers here, currently sitting on a pretty good improvement, about 2/10 up on their lap time there, going down to that chicane corner. So actually, I want to say I'm sometimes having a bit of a difficulty just recognizing which of these chicanes we are actually driving on here, with how identical they're looking, especially with turn 1s and the Kleinis chicane.
Yeah, I think you can. The lights don't do us any service, that's for certain. Typically, you can use the context clues of what's going around the track, but when half the time we're just looking at an apex curve with a little bit of sausages on it, it's just like, well, I'm not really too sure what I'm looking at. I think the only real chicane that is incredibly distinct is, of course, the first chicane, the Kleinis chicane, which is not small by any means, of course. Kleinis chicane is, of course, It means small. It doesn't look small when you look at how these curbs throw the car around. It is just a quick left to right, so maybe that's where it derives its name from. But you can see how dangerous those curbs can be. It's just throwing a car off the side of the track, rejecting it from any kind of lap time. As Inigo Lopez now looking for a little bit more lap time to close that gap up to the top too. But a little bit of gravel will definitely hamper their efforts in that.
Yes, with only a minute left to go, most of our drivers have actually opted to go into the pits here. In fact, it is only Inigo Lopez, Horace Lopez, and Jesper Swingley, and then Jax Wilson, X-Wolf, and Luna Taylor down the back who are currently on lap times here. So it seems like Blade Wolf, Luis Alfonso, and Tyler Van Peek have all opted to go to the pits here, concluding that they are not going to be able to get any more pace out of them. But it seems like Horace is going to be very, very motivated to try and get ahead of Blade Wolf Kagaya, because I think they might have a bit of trauma from last race here, where they just got stuck behind that Aston Martin for the entirety of the race here and could not make any moves here. So absolutely motivated to try one last chance around the track here to hopefully get some improvement.
As we roll through, we're going to take a ride on board, see if Orez can close this final little gap here. Very easy to overshoot the entry of that turn 2 complex. It looks like maybe a little bit of scrub causing some time loss, but rolling through, it's all about this exit out of turn 4, getting the car in early on throttle, not picking up that gravel on the outside. Looks decently put together there from Oraz, and them really need to lean through the chicane here, the Kleiner chicane, rolling through, pick up that first apex, kick the second, roll through, good exit out from Oraz. Maybe a little bit timid on entry there, but could make it up on the exit. Needs to really throw the car in for these 2 apexes here. This is our turn 7 complex with 4 apexes counting as 1 turn. Looks like a good run through the first 2, but throwing the car wide, trying to throw everything in the car into that exit curb there, and that's going to be an unfortunate end to qualifying for Oraz Volpez. It looked like they were possibly going to challenge up for that final position, but from then just letting go a little bit too early. And well, I think that sets us up for quite an exciting race here, almost a repeat of Oulton Park, if I had to say.
Definitely a very similar situation to what we had in Oulton Park just last week here. And Horace Lopez was looking to be going on a really good improvement there just before they invalidated their lap time going into that very long turn 7 corner complex there. I saw a flash of 2-3 tenths up on my delta here, which would have been just enough for them to sneak ahead of Blade Wolf Kagaya, but unfortunately that's not going to be there. So now there's going to be the next chance for Horace Lopez is going to be down that straight into the turn 1 Thursday corner here. So between the Aston Martin and the Jetta, who do you think is going to be getting the better launch?
I'd have to think that the Ginetta is going to get a better launch, but a matter of being able to hold it and really throw the car through the corner, it's almost 50-50. It looks like the Ginetta has been knocked down a little bit by some extra weight through the bop, and the Aston Martin's able to manage it. It'll be interesting. I'm not really too certain. I think the Ginetta will at least be able to pull alongside, but it's going to be down to our drivers to see who can carry it all the way through.
Yes, and if I'm going to be correct, with Blade Wolf Kagaya sitting at P4 here, I think they're going to be starting... I think it's going to be on the left side of the grid here, so they're going to be getting the inside line into turn 1 here, which is going to be giving them the better line going into there, but that inside is going to be soon turning into an outside for turn 2 here. So I think Oraz might have a chance. If they can just get alongside Blade Wolf's Aston Martin going into that turn 1 here, they might be able to just then squeeze them out going into that very longer sweeping turn 2 there and just trying to get ahead here. But we're going to be watching that very soon here.
Absolutely. And I think the real important part is that Oraz needs to focus on getting alongside, because running through turn 2, turn 3, then you have another right-hander of turn 4. If you can get on that right-hand side, you have a good opportunity, but it's just a matter of being able to get there in the first place. You could even take an over-under in turn 1, pin down Blade Wolf, and they aren't going to be able to get the run through turn 3, or turn 2, turn 3, and you can get an over-under, get that overlap on speed. There's a lot of options here. We've talked about it being a fairly simple yet technical track, and that allows our drivers to really express themselves and really maximize their driving talent. So,
right, now we're going to be with our grid here. We're going to be starting with our grid walk. That's going to be Luis Alfonso with a very strong 35.845 starting that grid here. With Tyler Van Beek, their Gold Championship incumbent, when the potential overall winner here, also sitting in P2. Behind me, it's going to be Inigo Lopez, the final goal driver of our grid here, sitting at P3 here. Joined a blindside in P4. This is going to be played for Kalmari actually on the outside, going up into this turbo complex here. Just right behind, that's going to be in P5. That's going to be Oras Fulpes. It's going to be a very fierce battle between these two silver contenders here. But right behind, there's also got to be Elias Flynn sitting in P6 just behind them. So any incidents between these two silver title contenders here, that's going to be giving a chance for Elias Flynn to get right around them and get ahead. In P7, that's going to be George Sarami, our first Garage 42 driver here, with that fellow Aston Martin V Advantage car sitting in P7, joined up alongside by Victor Fries in that singular Alpine of our grid here in P8. Behind them, it's going to be the Porsche 718 Cayman of Jesper Swingley sitting up in P9, the other Garage 42 car here. Joined up by our first AM-class drivers here, Wolfing Fox here, currently in a pretty good pole position for the AM-class here. But unfortunately, that's not going to be enough for them to win this title here. But that's going to be a good second position in the end. Behind them, that's going to be Jax Wilson in that third Aston Martin V Advantage of our grid here, sitting in P11. Joined up alongside by X-Wolf. Lots of wolves here in that name here. In P12 with that number 426 Mercedes AMG. In P13, we have Luna Taylor here, not being able to get the qualifying lap they wanted here, sitting at a pretty distant 13th place. Joined up alongside by Cohen Van Hove in that singular Chevrolet off our grid here. And I don't think they were able to get any lap at all here looking at their Delta. So perhaps they're trying to do their own last first challenge there.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we've seen Cohen always preferring the interesting picks, I guess you could say. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them going for that back of the grid effort and just seeing what they can do. And they tend to drive and just enjoy being out on track with everyone and having fun. Well, I think Cohen will be looking to have a little bit of fun from the back of the grid today. I look forward to seeing how many positions they can climb up. Of course, I think in a track like this, it's going to be more about staying safe and keeping your nose out of trouble. But Cohen will definitely be looking to make a couple positions up here as we see our cars start to roll away for the start of our formation lap.
A very short formation lap as well here with how short the Zolder track is indeed here. So it's going to be not much time for our drivers to try and warm up their tires because, again, these GT4s do not have their own tire warmers here, so they're just going to have to weave, brake, drag, just try to get their tires warmed up as much as possible here because it's also going to be pretty early in the morning. I do believe the in-game clock sits at 5 a.m. here, so it might be having a couple of rays of sunshine at the end of the race here, but there's not going to be much temperature on the track here. It's going to be cold. The tires are not going to be grippy, so it's going to be a very, very exciting showdown going into turn 1 here. Not only in gold, but also in silver, in overall. So lots of fighting to be had here for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hear the brakes being dragged by the 406, that Ginetta really cranking as much heat as they can through those brake discs and letting that heat radiate into the inside carcass of the tire, just allowing the pressures to climb up a little bit. The surface temperatures also pick up a little bit of temperature as well. So it'll be interesting to see if that pays off for the Ginetta driver there in the 406, if they're able to get a better jump on Blado Kagakio there because of it. Speaking of that jump as well, the Aston Martin typically not the strongest on the jump. Of course, it runs a 5.0 liter bi-turbo engine, if I remember correctly. The displacement may be a little bit incorrect there, but those turbos do take some time to spool up, and it does cost the Aston Martin a little bit of time. So it really plays into the favor of our Ginetta driver here. And then when we take a look back at the grid and Luis Alfonso looking back at all the headlights behind them, hard to distinguish really anyone other than Tyler Van Beek in that cookie car in the front there with the McLaren pushing its way through the night and really just shining its lights onto the back of the number 57. So it'll be really a matter of who is going to be behind you and a matter of if you're able to give them the space that is required.
It's going to be a pretty clear advantage for Luis Alfonso if we are going to be watching from their previous track record. Pretty much in every single scenario where Luis Alfonso has been in the lead here, they've been able to just get a really nice clean launch here, stay away from trouble, then just cruise to the finish here. So this could be a very similar scenario now with the final round of our GT4 Season 4 Championship happening here. Now the cars going line astern 2x2 for this final turn here into the final chicane here. So we have lots of fights to look for here, and we've got to be keeping our eyes on that big silver fight here, into the Oval 4 fight here now with only one more corner to go.
Absolutely, and one final corner as we roll through, and it's going to be a 2x2 once again for the final time in this championship as the lights are out. We wait for the 5 red lights to go out. Our drivers setting themselves up for one final run, and one final dash into turn 1 as we are green and ready to go, and it looks like a good start from both drivers in our front row, possibly even a better one from Tyler Van Beek, but holding the inside is Luis Alfonso, the 57, able to get a good enough getaway. But looking in the back there, looks like Orez is trapped a little bit between Inigo Lopez and Playboy Kagakio. Elias Flynn looking like they're trying to make a move all the ways around the outs or around the inside as Orez is now trapped behind the Chevrolet running into turn 4. Looks like our drivers are going to be keeping it clean there, but Blade of Kagakio is also pinned to the inside there, losing a little bit of momentum as Inigo Lopez is going to be taking the inside, running into Kleiner Chicane. It might be a backed out move from the Blue E Mercedes, running through into turn 6, and no, it's going to be a position for Bladewolf. So this is a massive moment in your silver championship battle right now, as 2 cars have managed to squeeze their way in between Orez and Bladewolf, who Orez is now desperately trying to get through the second chicane there of turn 7, running through the final right-hand corner here, and I don't think this is the start that Orez wanted. They're going to be put in a very bad position now, especially with how hard we've seen that Ginetta have to try to get past other cars. Well, Elias Flynn now trying to get past the Mercedes, the Blues Mercedes of Inigo Lopez, who is currently struggling, looking like cold tires, like getting a little bit of a detriment for them. Running into the final corner here, they're going to file line astern with the Camaro, and Orez looking to take the inside line. So it's going to be Inigo Lopez dropping in another position. Orez Lopez now able to fly through. George Sharami in the background trying to get around the outside of the final chicane, and it looks like they might be able to sneak their way through. So right now, Inigo Lopez on a massive fallback from the front or second row of the grid, and the 423 is falling like a brick right now. Quick to freeze in the 123 now looking like they're under threat or able to threaten that Mercedes. Is a little bit of a brake check coming from the 2 of them.
Yeah, an absolute disaster for Inigo Lopez here, starting so far ahead in P3, now all the way down in P7 here, giving that better opportunity for us to try to maybe catch up to the rear bumper of Kakio here. We're going to be keeping our eye now on Victor Fries here, trying to chase down, watching from their onboard as Inigo Lopez is going to be chasing down. Now it's going to be the car of Surabi right ahead, hoping to maybe have a dive going up into that clutch chicane here, but no, there's not going to be space for that. And again, just very aggressively over those curbs here, just trying to get that momentum going here. But looking up at our front fight here, there was that brief fight between Luis Alfonso and Tyler Van Beek here, but there's going to be no change there. Also going to be no change between Orez Lopez and Elias Flynn here. This is going to be the absolute worst scenario for Orez Lopez to be here, because they have an entirely different class car between them, and they don't even fighting for the same position, so they need to be getting around that Chevrolet very fast.
Absolutely, but that Chevrolet is shown to have good top speed. And rolling down into the hairpin, we're going to see Jesper Swingley sneaking onto the inside of the Alpine, who was looking like they were on a charge, going a little bit deep and wide into the dirt of the chicane on the outside there, running down into the final hairpin. They're going to be taking that spot up to P8, and we look up to the flashes and the lights as Inigo Lopez now trying to get their momentum back in George Army. They're now closing back up, and it looks like there was actually even a chance for a challenge there as Luis Alfonso setting 136.43 with your fastest lap. Tyler Van Beek responding to 36.3. Nico Lopez looking like they're trying to fill in that inside of turn 1 and running around the inside, but George Army able to fend that off here as a couple of our drivers, it looks like, are going to be filing for a little bit of a battle here. Several drivers within half a second, and Inigo Lopez, one of the first on the challenge, looking to the inside of 4, jinking everywhere, just trying to get some kind of movement out of George Sarami, but I think they threw themselves inside a little bit too late there and lost a lot of time in turn 4. They're going to have to make that back up through turn 5 here, otherwise Jesper Swingley is going to be able to put them under pressure, and the Mercedes is going to be at risk of losing another position.
This must be absolutely going to be ready to pounce on any kind of mistake that's going to be happening from Inigo Lopez here, going down to that turn 6 boot tech corner here towards turn 7. So I think that's going to be pretty. I apologize for my mispronunciation here, but a bit of a poor exit going to that first part of that double chicane complex here, losing again even more time to Jesper Swingley, but that is going to be right behind them, ready to pounce on them. And also ahead of them, we're going to be seeing Elias Flynn and Orez Lopez still going to be stuck to each other, only half a second separating between them, and it's also going to be George Surami also right behind us, well, hoping to have a bit of a advance on these cars here, but Paliku'i here, that's going to be the car leading this entire pack here, and they are looking to be very calm and confident here so far with no change in position. And but there's going to be also another thing to consider. It's going to be track limits here, because cutting these chicanes too deep is going to be giving you those track limits violations here. And if there's going to be a drive-through penalty in any of these cars here, that's going to be throwing this championship fight wide open.
Absolutely, and it's going to be making a big moment, a big swing in the points right now for Orez Volpez and Blade Kalmari. We've talked about it. It's really either of these drivers. Whoever's able to finish in front is going to be taking this silver championship here. And Elias Flynn really just fighting for individual results here as they're looking to push themselves onto that overall podium. They actually have closed that gap back up to Blade Wolf's rear end, the rear wing looking ever so bigger in the windshield of that 77. As you look at the front of the pack there, it looks like our first two drivers, the 57 and 84, Tyler Van Beek and Luis Alfonso, have drifted off into the distance. They're sitting about a 4-second gap in front of Blade Wolf Kalmari, but this third position is much up for grabs as they are now under pressure from the Ginetta of Orez Volpez. It looks like that Orez is not able to get close enough to the rear end of the 77 to make a dive here, but a little bit clunky, a little bit clumsy for the Chevrolet through the chicane there, and that might leave them open to some kind of attack from this Ginetta driver. But Jesper Swingley now also looking to put pressure onto George Chirami. They are also under threat from the Alpine behind. Very similar looking cars, I have to say, until you look at them a little bit closer here, but it's going to be the German mark chasing down the British, and of course chased down by that beautiful A523, is it? That livery that is sitting on the Alpine there. Well, they're going to be looking to promote themselves up another position as Luis Alfonso sits the fastest lap of the race.
Talking about a French counterattack from the Norwegian driver in that Alpine here, with Victor France again chasing really far down onto the missing livery texture of Jesper Swingley here, hoping to probably get a cutback again onto that it was a pretty good move, I would say, from Jesper Swingley, but I don't think Victor France was quite approving of that. We're going to be actually that's going to be a big dive from Nico Lopez, managing just barely squeeze ahead of George Robbie going down to that turn 4 corner here. Got to be a good launch for them, but that's got to be now George Robbie right behind him, hoping to get that dive there. That's going to be now Orez Volpez also having a big dive going up into that Kleine chicane here. That's going to be the move off the race here. That's going to be one more car down. That's going to be a chase down to Blade Wolf Kalmari here. They lost quite a lot of time here fighting with Elias Flynn here, about 2-second gap here, but with the lap times with about 52, that's going to be down to just churning down those laps here. But it's going to be very interesting to see if they're going to be able to get that lap times closed in here with they're losing 2/10, I think, every lap in the qualifying here. So lots of ground to gain for Blade for sure.
Absolutely, but we've seen that Orez looked like they were always a bit stronger in that race trim, and they proved it with those great qualifying efforts that they were able to comfortably convert into good race positions and finishes. We saw it in Oulton Park. They looked like they were pushing Blade Wolf around for pretty much the entire lap, so a good chance that Ginetta is a lot stronger in race trim than the Aston is, maybe losing a little bit more, especially in the later phases, as the heavier weight of that Aston Martin starts to scrub the tires a little bit more, put a little bit more wear through them. But we have another Aston Martin here is looking to advance their position. George Chirami, who is continuing to put Inigo Lopez under pressure, running into turn 1 here, sitting at about half a second back. The Inigo Lopez, I think, finally stabilized that Mercedes and no longer losing momentum. Those cold tires definitely looked like they were playing some kind of detriment on the Bluey driver, and now it's just a matter of being able to keep that gap and run away with it. But George Chirami is not running away, as Jesper Swingley is now starting to stack up the pressure running through turn 4 here, looking at about a 1-car gap, 2/10 even, into the Kleine chicane here. And it looks like that Porsche for once does not struggle with that top speed. It is right on the rear wing of the number 10 here, so any kind of mistake and a big bump just kind of like that will open the door for this Porsche to be able to close up, make an opportunity. Jesper's thinking about it, showing half a headlight into the mirrors as George takes a little bit of dirt running through the turn 7 chicane, using all that sausage curb, inside, inside again, all the outside curb. But it looks like it's going to be another position held. There's a lot of dirt kicked up in front of George Chirami there, running down towards the hairpin. It could be an opportunity for them, but it looks like the gap has stayed open enough that George is not able to throw any kind of lob down the inside. But Jesper Swingley right now currently sitting in the best position to advance in this train of 4.
Speaking of gaps as well, there's also the gap between Beidou Kagekio and Oras Lopez being shrinking down to a single second at this point. So Oras Lopez definitely on a charge to catch up to their Silver Championship contender here. But we're going to be keeping our focus on this fight between Jesper Swingley and George Robbie here at the moment here. The advantage of the straight line speed is not going to be as great for these Aston Martins, for these Mercedes here, with the short track, with the shorter straights of Zolder here. So this is going to be a good opportunity for Jesper Swingley, for Oras, but not quite like that, Jesper. You do not need to be going off track. This is not a rally championship. You were doing the rally before. Focus on the track there. But again, a bit of an off-track moment here from Jesper Swingley, losing the time they had just gained on George Robbie, so going to have to work again to try and get alongside, trying to make a move here. But that chicane incline, the climb chicane turn is going to be a good big opportunity for all of them to make a set here. Again, just barely missing the outside gravel here in the exit of turn 5. Again, giving a good launch down to that first, down to that final chicane here, but not quite close enough to make a set yet.
Absolutely, that gap probably needs to be sitting about 0.2 of a second to be able to make a proper send and take the inside line. But oftentimes, if they defend that inside line, you need to be even closer or be able to get your front end alongside to kind of dictate their line through the corner on the second half of a chicane. So Jesper Swingley really has their work cut out for them, as George Robbie is, of course, not going to give up this position very easily. But looking back up front as well, whereas Volpez closed that gap down from 2 seconds down to half a second now, back to the rear wing of Blade Wolf in just about 2 laps time, a little bit more. So the 406 is on an absolute tear right now, but it's just a matter of being able to get past. We've seen that Ginetta, same as Alton Park, was definitely the faster car, was really strong around the lap time, but it wasn't strong enough in the right places, and it was really struggling to get any kind of overlap through the lap and get some kind of move going. Well, we have another kind of repeat here as the Genetic has closed up onto the rear end of the Aston Martin of Blade Wolf, and it could be another big battle. I think the Genetta might have a little bit more of an advantage here than it did at Alton Park. It looks like it has good momentum carrying through these corners, but another factor that Oras didn't have to deal with at Alton Park, well, they have another driver on their tail end. You can see in the rearview mirror up top there, Elias Flynn and that Chevrolet that we saw get overtaken a little bit earlier in the race. They're going to be putting pressure on the 406 here, and it's really going to make any move that Oras Volpez puts on here a lot higher risk. And on top of this being for the Silver Championship, you don't want to be taken out from that overall podium position as well. And of course, that's what Elias Flynn wants most of all, because for them, this championship does not matter to them. They are just looking for that overall individual result.
This is also going to be working better for advantage for Oras Volpez, because Alton Park was not really the best kind of track for overtaking here with the very fast corners here, lots of chicanes here, but the chicanes in Zolder are going to be much slower. There's going to be many heavier vehicles also, just like this one, into that turn 8, very deep corner complex here. Also, we're seeing another opportunity from Jesper Swingley trying to get around George Robbie here, going down to that turn 7 corner complex here, but no cigar so far here. But that's going to be also the Alpine of Quick the Fries right behind the brain to make any moves as well on any kind of mistake that's going to be happening between these cars ahead here, with Jesper Swingley now getting just a half a second, less than a half a second between them, going down to that final turn 10 corner chicane here. A bit of a peek into the inside bumper. They're almost brushing the Aston Martin's rear wing going down that very long straight here. So it's going to be them all going just back to back, almost in a conga line here going through this track here. And I'm quite surprised there's not been any contact so far. So I hope it's going to be staying that way, with now Jesper Swingley having a bit of a peek up on the inside, going down into turn 1 here. There's not been quite enough space here to make an overtake here, but Jesper Swingley is definitely going to be harassing, going all over the Aston Martin's mirrors here, hoping to force them into a mistake. Probably a similar situation going to be happening between Oras Volpez and Playboy again, almost again brushing the George Robbie's rear bumper here. So Jesper Swingley is definitely applying the pressure on the Aston Martin here.
Absolutely, no question, and it's going to be a factor of who can get the best run where. All Jesper Swingley needs is for one big opportunity to get themselves swung onto the inside or around the outside of that Aston Martin, because they are pushing the number 10 through the chicane here. And we saw that Jesper is also really strong through the Kleiner chicane here, running into turn 6, so we roll towards the turn 7 chicane and double right-hander. Jesper's not close enough to take take that inside away from George Army. A very hard braking zone in there to get the car thrown to the inside. You're already in that long sweeping left-hander. Car's loaded up on those right side tires to change direction and get hard on the brakes. It's very easy to snag a rear tire, rear corner, and throw the car all over the place. But George Army is throwing the car a little bit deep there coming into the hairpin, and it could be a good opportunity to run down to the final chicane here. It looks like Jesper wasn't able to capitalize on it. George Army got a good enough run when they were given the space from the 279, but rolling through the final chicane here and two-wheeling from the Porsche driver using all that track space that they are allotted. That's going to be possibly a good run, but I think George Army benefiting too much from the traction of not lifting those inside tires as we run through turn one once again.
Jesper definitely is not afraid of just launching themselves all those cables to get the absolute best exit possible here, to get as close as possible to George Ramos here. And they're definitely paying dividends here, but that's going to be a poor exit from them, almost touching the grass on the exit of turn 3 here. Going to be losing then the opportunity to make a ascent going down into turn 4 or into turn 5's Kleine chicane here. Just going to be again losing a bit of time there, but with how fast Jesper has been this entire start of the race here so far, they're going to be catching that back up again. In fact, they're already less than half a second again to George Ramos going down into the Kleine chicane here. Just going to be having a bit of a peek up into their mirrors here, going into their corner here. Not quite close enough to make a ascent here so far. A big bounce on the exit, but it's going to be a poor exit from George Robbie. Going to be getting a good launch for Jesper Sweeney. That's going to be now Jesper Sweeney up on the outside there, going to that fast right hand of Booty here. That's going to be almost, that's going to be then door to door, side to side, going up to that turn corner here. That's going to be Jesper Sweeney down deep. It's going to be a big corner cut. I don't think that's going to be quite valid there. And in fact, Jesper's going to be backing out of that. So good sportsmanship from them. Again, another opportunity lost for Jesper Sweeney trying to get around. And in fact, they're going to be noticing an opportunity to almost the Alpine of Victor Fries as well, now going through into that turn 8 hairpin here. So that one tiny opportunity to extend there just cost them massive amounts of time, almost 2 positions.
Absolutely, and that's the risk that Jesper Swingley is running by having that car on their rear end, and Oraz Volpez under the same risk as Elias Flynn is directly behind them in that Chevrolet. And of course, it's almost even a higher risk for Oraz because of the fact of, 1, the championship, but 2, the straight line deficit that the Ginetta has, that if you lose that momentum, there's a very good chance that that Camaro in the background there is going to put the power and the pedal to the metal to just get around you. But it looks like Blade Wolf has started to go defensive throughout the lap here. We saw them a touch shallow in turn 1, but very shallow in turn 2 and 3. They're not even using the full width of the track. So this could open up an opportunity for the 406 as we roll through turn 4. And it looks like the run not strong enough for the Ginetta as they're starting to lose ground a little bit to the Aston Martin running into turn 5 here, picking up the inside curbing, losing a little bit on the exit there as the weight of that Aston Martin starting to settle a little bit earlier here. But I think we're starting to see the pace of the Aston Martin just falling off just a touch more than that Ginetta, who is really keeping pace and keeping that pressure lodged onto the rear wing of that 142. We rolled down into the hairpin here and looking to the inside of George Army. We're looking at another opportunity from Jesper Swingley, who's really trying to make that dive past the Aston Martin here. I think we almost have a mirror image with these 2 battles here of 3 cars stuck in a train, and Aston Martin leading at the front, looking to defend from a lot more agile but lower powered car in that second position here, back and forth between the 2 of them.
That's going to be 2 3-car conga lines sitting in our track here, separated only by Inigo Lopez. They're sitting in a bit of a no man's land here. But the more that this lead group here of Oraz Lopez, of Elias Flynn, of Leif Kagagi are going to be stuck fighting each other, you can see right in the background, that's going to be Inigo Lopez right there, ready to pay dividends, ready to get past back into that leading podium position here. And you can see they're just absolutely flying on the track here, getting into those very fast 36 lap times here. Meanwhile, Elias, Oraz Lopez, and Leif Kagagi are only setting 37 mid, almost high 37s here. So with the more these cars are going to be fighting, there's going to be a 3-car fight turning into a 4-car fight here, which is going to be proving even more unpredictable, causing even more potential chaos, especially for this very important silver fight here. With again, Kagagi forcing to try to take a bit defensive line going up into the Kleine chicane here, and Oraz Lopez just hounding them on their mirrors here, left and right, up and down. It's going to be down to how good Leifo's nerves can hold.
Absolutely, and of course, you mentioned it before with Inigo Lopez in the background there. You see them kind of skirting through with their headlights shining through this bitterly dark and cold night in the Belgian countryside. Well, they're going to be closing that gap every single time that they battle here in the front pack. And of course, that is going to be one of our goal drivers. They're going to be looking for only an improvement in the overall positions here, and they don't care about these kind of meddling silver championship battles from their perspective. So it's going to be a threat for Blade Wolf if maybe even a Nico gets past Oraz, that they could throw a bit of a spanner in the works, because they've been closing this gap up naturally by a couple of tenths per lap, actually about half a second per lap going off of our last lap time by. So Nico Lopez could actually have a very significant say in this battle here. Another 3 tenths taken out this time by from the Mercedes in the background there, but Oraz is looking to no longer be in the background, rolling it around turn 2. Blade Wolf very defensive coming through. The Ginetta trying to build back up some momentum as we run it down to turn 4. I think the Ginetta having to lose a little bit more pace than needed to roll the car through, but our pit window now opening, so opening up those strategy options for another 20 minutes here. Each of our drivers needs to come in for a mandatory fuel service or an optional tire service that loses you an extra 5 seconds here. So that's going to open up options for the Ginetta, for the Aston Martin here, and it's going to allow our drivers to even shuffle through the strategic mindset of that pit lane.
It's going to be a big choice between our drivers at the moment here, if they're going to be switching for new tires or if they're going to be keeping to their current ones here. We saw from last week's race here where Oraz Lopez, they opted to have new tires on their vehicle, whereas Blake Wolf opted not to do that, instead preferring to keep the track position ahead of Oraz Lopez here. But with the final race here, with only this one position, this one fight left here, I think there could be a chance where neither car is going to be going for any tires. That's going to be opting to keep their track position here. That's going to be down to who can get the best laptop, best lap time, best pit stop time in the end here. Now getting watching on board with Elias, this epic battle of silvers here, going down to that final Jackie X chicane here. Again, big lodge on the straight here, a bit of an oversteer moment from Elias, that could be losing the speed from the Chevrolet, but there's no speed lost from the Ginetta of Oraz Lopez here, chasing down that Aston Martin, going down into that tight left-hander turn 1 here. Arasta here, just trying to get as close as possible into that corner, into that second triple right-handers, going over to turn 2, turn 3, onwards to turn 4 here, with again almost no space between these two cars here, and with Elias seems to be slowly drifting away from this pack here. But now it's going to be, I think I saw a flash of a car ahead of him, so is that going to be lap traffic I just saw? I think, yes, that is indeed, that's going to be the, I think that's going to be the Mercedes of Wolf right ahead of him. So, and again, lap traffic might also just be throwing spanner into the works here and giving the absolute right opportunity for Oraz Lopez to get around there. But it's got to be getting in a very dangerous part of the track here, going down now over to turn 5, to turn 6 here, with the flashing lights here, just forcing the car to go by here. That's going to be a bit of a time lost for Oraz Lopez. It's got to be giving an opportunity for Elias Flynn to have a bit of a peak going on into the turn 7 chicane here. But no change in position here so far. It seems like everyone is being able to get nice and neat here. But now a very good exit from Oraz Lopez, now going up the hill towards turn 8, that tight hairpin corner. This could be the best opportunity for Oraz Lopez to just make a big set on the inside here. That's going to be a set. It's going to be a big dive on the inside. That's going to be then pushing Blade was just about wide here, but it's going to be a big oversteer. It's going to be a step oversteer. It's going to be giving opportunity for Elias Flynn to have a peak here. So a very good send, but it's just not enough. Yeah, that's a tiny bit of oversteer cost them very dear. They now have to force a defensive move onto Elias Flynn here. So these cars are going to be very desperate for some position at the moment here. We actually now saw Elias Flynn also opting to be the first car of this pack here to go with the pit lane, just deciding, okay, I don't want to waste any more time here.
Absolutely, and they might even jump this entire pack, seeing that Blade Wolf and Oraz are fighting. We saw the danger that Oraz gets put under by making a big send there. We talked about it earlier, that this is a little bit different to that old park round where Oraz was able to make sends and fight with Blade Wolf. Well, every time they put a move on now, they need to be a little bit more tactical, a little bit more composed and calculated with their moves, because that opens them up to opportunities behind. Of course, now they have a little bit of a breather as they roll through, and the only car behind them immediately is Nico Lopez, about 2 seconds back. Of course, they were starting to put pressure on the rear end of Elias Flynn, but sitting a little bit too far back for a send right now. But an important note here that I'm noticing, at least with just the general car behaviors, the Ginetta of Oraz, it looks like they're slowing down a little bit more on that final turn in and trying to get the speed back up. Not as comfortable sitting underneath the rear wing of the Aston Martin and slowing down just a touch more right when they need it most. most to sit right against that rear bumper of the 142. Well, I think Orez is going to have to start pushing a little bit more risk, getting up onto the rear end of that Aston Martin just a touch more, because that is where they're losing out crucial lap time every single time that they're trying to battle against this Aston Martin. And while they do struggle on the exits, to keep themselves in that fight and get a good run out, they need to close up that final gap to just make sure that they are there when the opportunity comes from Blade Wolf making a mistake.
There's still plenty of opportunities left in this race here, but with only about 50 minutes left on our pit window here, this could be down to a battle of strategy to see who's going to be the one to dive into the pit lane first, who's going to be the one to get tires, who's going to be getting the fastest pit entry, pit stop, and pit exit speed here. But neither of these drivers so far are opting to go with the pit lane. They just want to be scrapping this out on the track here. No strategy fight between them so far. Again, a very good scent from Orez Lopez going through that turn 3, now onwards to turn 4, and now to the attack line of chicane here. Again, just chasing that Aston Martin. There's not going to be as much of an advantage from that Aston Martin on the straight lines here with how short these straights are. Again, they're going to be only 3/10 separated going down to this line of chicane here, so this could be another opportunity for Orez Lopez to make a big peak up on the inside chicane here, but no change in position here so far. It's going to be them just biding their time, waiting again. They're going to be getting even closer now into that second chicane of turn 7 here, with again another opportunity just keeping themselves tied up on the inside here through that turn 6 corner here. I think they're just going to be waiting for that one opportunity they had in turn 8. I think that's going to be their best opportunity to make an overtake happen here. We've got to be watching them very, very close here. They're very close here, and again, to swing it out wide, and they did lose a bit of speed there going through turn 7 down towards turn 8 here, so not going to be a send this lap, but perhaps possibly another one next lap.
Absolutely. The car just seems a little bit clumsy on that final right-hander of turn 7 coming through the chicane. So it could be an opportunity for Blade Wolf to open up the gap in future here if they keep their composure through that section. Or Volpes kind of stuck in an interesting position here because they can't send it deep underneath the brakes to get into that pit lane. That pit lane is directly in front of the braking zone. So if you're stuck behind another car, it's very hard to throw that gap. You actually almost throw away close to half a second having to slow down, speed the car back up, and get it into the pit lane and then throw it through. So Orez, I think, playing the long game here, trying to push Blade Wolf into the worst spot possible, as it looks like that Aston Martin has been really struggling with its tires, losing that mid-corner grip quite massively, and just hanging on it from that power cycle from the big V8 that sits in the front of that machine. Well, it looks like, yeah, just the struggle on the entry from the Aston Martin. You can see that Ginetta close up half a car length through a section that doesn't really have much braking other than get the car into the corner, and it's going to be another time loss to the Ginetta behind. So that pressure keeps mounting and building as they build the speed back out of the first chicane here. It looks like this gap is a little bit too large this time by a quick little blink from the 142 as well. So internet issues rearing their head and looking like they're trying to challenge the safety of our drivers and the mechanical issues that you see in real life. Well, it looks like Blade Wolf now has pressure from more than one angle as they roll through, or as Volpes trying to make some kind of opportunity here, but rolling through into the hairpin, another opportunity too far away from the Ginetta driver as we now run down to the hairpin, or out of the hairpin once again. It will be into the pits for either one of our drivers. It does look like the Aston Martin Blade Wolf has now dived into the pits, and it looks like Inigo Lopez in the Mercedes has now thrown it in as well behind them. So this is a little bit before the halfway mark. We could see the Aston Martin we talked about struggling on tires, was losing some pace in the early phases. If they take tires here, they're going to be struggling even more in the second half of the stint. But also on the offhand of that, you could even see that Aston Martin take no tires, which will be quite a gamble if I had to say. But I think even taking tires is a gamble as well in itself. You lose 5 seconds. That Ginetta looks extremely strong and likely won't be taking tires as well. So do you give up this track position that has seemed to be so beneficial for you to take those tires, or do you let the car roll on already struggling tires and see if you can bring an ailing corner to the end of the race?
Just watching that battle so far between Blade Wolf and Orez Lopez here, the Blade Wolf was struggling. They were just having to bring elbows out, just trying to be as defensive as possible. And it was only that lucky oversteer moment for Oras Lopez that enabled Blade Wolf to still stay ahead of him. So I think they might be prioritizing keeping their track position, not opting to put on their 2 tires here, have a repeat of what they had in Oldham Park last week, where they just tried to stay ahead and just use that defensive racecraft to keep themselves ahead here. We're going to be watching that very interestingly. Now we're going to be keeping our attention on that fight between Jesper Swingley and George Robbie here. The gap seems to have widened out a little bit here. So there's not going to be not much action happening at the moment here, but there's going to be probably some more pit stop actions to be thinking of here. We're going to be now watching now Oras Volbes here, seeing if they're going to be going down the straight, opting to answer to that pit stop that they had from Paliku'i. Indeed, they're not going to be doing that, so this could open up potentially an overcut opportunity for Playpool to get ahead to Oras Volbes to even get further ahead, because there's going to be no tire warmers on these cars here. So with how long they need to take to get their tires back up to their temperature, this could be another opportunity for Oras Volbes. So it's a very interesting strategy battle at the moment watching here. But somebody who is not struggling, somebody who's been out there front cruising, that's going to be Luis Alfonso, sitting at a very dominant position here. Nobody's been challenging them so far, and after that first little bit of a scrap between him and Tyler Van Beek here, there's just been no contention so far. So it's going to be looking to be a very good favorite for clinching this title with the last round to go.
Absolutely, and I saw last time I checked, Tyler Van Beek is in the pits right now, taking their mandatory pit stop. Last I checked, that gap was 5 seconds, so it has been a very, very strong run from Luis Alfonso. Of course, a very good effort from Tyler Van Beek to keep the pressure on and keep that pace up, but Luis Alfonso has looked extremely at home in these GT4s as well. As we roll through the hairpin, the 57 Mercedes looking to kind of bring this car home, winning half of the championship if they're able to bring it home here with 3 overall wins here. So it'd be a very, very strong championship challenge from the 57. And Tyler Van Beek looking to, of course, still bring home the gold championship. Pretty much the champion-elect without the assignment of Daniel Taberner to this race, who has not been entered actually from the entry list of this race. But Luis Alfonso looked like they were under pressure for the whole championship. I think finally starting to be able to relax, take that little bit of a breath and sigh of relief as the silver championship protagonist here, you must say, does not have any chance to breathe a sigh of release. And we roll through, and it's a time attack battle between Blade Kagakio and Oras Volbes to see who's able to get out in front here.
Something interesting I do want to point out here is that the lap times, like Blade Wolf Kagakio has actually fallen into the back of this entire pack between Elias Flynn, Inigo Lopez, and Oras Volbes here, with Blade Wolf actually opting to put on some new tires. So I can see they had a 5-second longer pit stop compared to their other competitors in their same speed class here. So this could be the opportunity that Oras Volbes needs. So if they're going to be opting to not change their tires, they're going to be opting to keep their track position. This could be the advantage they get here. They're just going to have to try and nurse their car to the end. We're also going to be seeing, I think that's going to be George Robbie's car going unusually slowly. I'm not quite sure if there's going to be some issue here, some issue with the car out of fuel or something, but they are going crawl mode at the moment here, so I hope it's not going to be them out of fuel.
No, I do see an incident icon between them and Jesper Swingley, though, so it's a good chance that Jesper and them got tangled up in a battle here. I didn't see what happened as well, but it does have every indication that those two did maybe have it coming together. We're going to see if we can take a look here on the replay. So Jesper Swingley, who we saw pressuring the rear end of the Aston Martin so diligently, is sitting quite far back in turn 1. Maybe an opportunity, I think maybe even a spin possibly. Oh, and a very dangerous rejoin for Joshua Army. So I think that's why they conceded that position, knowing that they were in the wrong there once those tires slid off track, letting Jesper have that position that they were so violently defending. But now the pressure looks like they are right back onto the back end of Jesper Swingley, and maybe even looking for a bid to get back in front again.
Looks like despite that big incident between Jesper Swingley and George Robbie, both of these cars are able to get away fine here without too much loss in performance here. We're going to be seeing Luis Alfonso in the pits here to opting to finally do their mandatory pit stop at the moment here. They're going to be just about done with their own pit stop here. Going to be getting ready to go here. That's going to be also George Robbie opting to go to pit lane as well, probably to also fix their damage here. That's going to be inheriting the provisional lead here at the moment to Oras Volbes here, just leading this entire pack here. So probably a nice basket moment for Oras Volbes to be leading a Simufur race in silver class at the moment here. So they're definitely staking their claim to a potential promotion to gold class, potentially alongside Blade Wolf as well here. But at this moment here, with Blade Wolf very far behind you, I'm not sure if they are aware that Blade Wolf put on new tires or not here, but would you in this scenario put on new tires or keep your track position?
It's so with the pace that I would have seen from Oras and looking like they were definitely the faster car, I would continue as we're running here. We're continuing to open up that gap on the overcut, knowing that even if they go in and take tires, that they're going to lose time on those outlaps and getting those tires back up to temperature. The GT4s have quite a long tire warm-up. It's about 2-3 laps to get these tires into a pretty good window, and that's a lot of free time for you if you stay out. I would have to risk it and say that my pace is going to hang on enough that I can stay in front, knowing that if they did take tires, that I will come out in front, and if they didn't, I would look like I was faster on the tires that we were on, and I think I can make something happen in the long run. But looks like Orez has now taken that long run down into the pits. 25 minutes left in this race, so either way that they go, 25 minutes left on the tires that they walk out of this pit lane with. It's just a matter if they're going to take those extra tires, take the extra time to put on some new rubber, put on some new boots, and basically fight Blade Wolf as it is, or are they going to put themselves at the disadvantage? As we know, Blade Wolf has taken those new tires, and are we going to see a battle where it goes from the hunter to the hunted?
We're going to be watching this pit stop very, very closely here for sure. Orange Pub is now finally stopped, and we're going to be watching if the pit stop time is going to be 32 or 27 seconds. That is the difference between putting on tires or not putting on tires here. Now going to be Blade Wolf going down to that tight hairpin corner here, just unleashing the power. There's going to be a very long exit onto the pit lane. So there's, depending on how fast they're going to be going to that very awkward kind of left-hander, then spinning themselves right out to the turn 2 complex here. Going to be watching the gameplay for now, heading over to the last corner, heading across the finish line with Orsbob still in the pit lane here. They do seem to have, yes, they have a 27-second pit stop. They have opted to not put on tires here. They have opted to keep their track position. So that's going to be now Oras Lopez miles ahead, now all the way down into turn 3. Actually just barely ahead of Elias Smith. That's going to be now the fight relit between these two competitors here in different classes here. So despite Oras Lopez opting to keep their track position here, they're probably not going to be keeping them for long with Elias Smith right behind them. In fact, almost hugging the rear bumper of that gentle here. That's going to be, again, Hunter being the Hunter, but not the Hunter that they were expecting.
Absolutely, and we know how hard it is to get these overtakes going. If Juarez can hang on to it, will they get their tires back up to temperature? Just need about a lap here to get the temperature back in that they lost in the pit lane. They should be able to hang in front of Elias Flynn here, but we saw Elias Flynn dive into the pits early as they were stuck at the back of the pack and really trying to benefit from the battle of Blade Wolf and Juarez here. But looking through the stop times, Elias Flynn also took no tires here, so that Camaro might be struggling a little bit. The Mercedes behind that is occasionally flashing through of Inigo Lopez, they have not taken tires. Blade Wolf Kagakio is the first driver of this mid-pack that has taken tires, so they're going to be looking like they're in the catbird seat to try to make a charge through this field. Of course, they still have to get through the field, and of course the car behind them, Quick to Freeze, also taking tires, so they're looking like they might have an opportunity to charge through the field, although from a little bit further back.
That's also going to be Tyler Van Beek and Luis Alfonso and Jesper Smith now completing their own pit stops here. That's going to be everyone in our race so far now having completed their mandatory pit stops. So now it's going to be just down to a battle of pace, a battle of speed here, a battle of final bit of strategy to see if Blade Wolf's fresher tires are going to be lasting on for this final 22.5 minutes of the race here to get ahead. But the comments we heard from Blade Wolf earlier is that they had to go to the pit stop. They didn't have any other choice here, but just because trying to defend from Oras Lopez for that long, just cooked their tires so hard they had to put on some new rubber behind them. So with them now trying to just push as hard as they can to catch up to their silver title contender buddy here, I think that could also be another chance where they're just going to be cooking their tires again. So there's not going to be any more change of position here. So this could have been the title deciding move right here.
It absolutely could have been Orez Lopez keeping that pace and keeping that pressure on, as they had to do for now 2 races, pretty much a race and a half if you consider all of Old Park leading into now, just to get some kind of overtake done for that 406 and then get in front of a 142 Aston Martin. It was a very, very strong effort from the 406. Well, now they still have the hard part of this race to go. 22 minutes on the same tires. Of course, we've seen the tires degrade on some of these other cars in only a 30-minute window, so that shows that it's not a small task for Orez to take these tires all the way to the end, as Luis Alfonso now makes that lap time a little bit smaller, 135.58, this new fastest lap of the race. And of course, while Orez has to save these tires and keep them alive, they have pressure directly behind Elias Flynn, and we haven't really spent much time watching Elias's racecraft to see how they keep those tires alive. Are they able to keep those tires going the distance? Maybe that it goes even better than the Ginetta as that gap has opened up just a tiny bit. So Elias Flynn maybe losing a tiny bit, maybe just had a little bit of a moment with the obscured vision of the car in front. But there's a lot of questions to be answered here in the last 21 minutes of this race, and all the answers will come by the end of this race. It's just a matter of when.
Something we can see right now is going to be lap times here. We just saw Leifulf Kagagi crossing the finish line with a lap time of 37.0. So with their fresh rubber here, a couple of laps in, so the tires are definitely in their temperature window right now. But they are actually only a tenth faster than Oraz Vobes in their old rubber in those Ginettos. So perhaps that Ginetto is pretty gentle on their tires, which is giving Oraz Vobes the advantage to just stay ahead, keep churning in those fast laps here, because the gap is currently sitting at quite a big margin, about 4-5 seconds between them. So even if Leifulf is going to be able to get those a couple of tenths a lap here with only about 20 minutes to go, I don't think that's going to be enough for them, because then they also have to actually get around Oraz Vobes, and at that point those tires are going to be so good. I don't think there's going to be another chance here.
Yeah, the scary part is, though, is if they do catch up, they do have quite a significant power advantage, although it is a little bit neutralized by the fact that we are at Zolder here. It is still enough that they have a better chance when going for the overtake than the Ginetta of Oraz did, who had to get quite a significant overlap and overspeed even to get their car alongside. All as Bladewolf will have to do is match that Ginetta and make sure that they're close enough through the corner to get a bumper alongside. But the biggest danger of that is the fact that they have to get in front of this car right in front of them. That is the Blue Mercedes of Inigo Lopez, who surely isn't going to make life easy for Bladewolf here. Of course, I don't think that there's any bad blood here that will send them into the gravel or into a wall, but nonetheless, any kind of battle here at Zolder loses significant amounts of time, and at the rate that Bladewolf is closing in with only a 10th game here, 10th game there, 2 tenths on this past lap just about, it's really, really hard to gain back any time. You lose a second fighting, and it takes you 5 laps to close that gap back up at the time gained last lap. And of course, that's probably going to fall off even more as the tires start to wear down on that Aston Martin. It's currently been sitting on for almost half a stint relative to what they were on last time around. So we'll see how this works out in the later stages for the 142, but it's a very, very dangerous position.
Something to also consider is that Oraz Vobes is currently not really fighting anybody. They have been able to keep a pretty nice margin onto Elias Flynn right behind them, so they're not forced to take any of those defensive moves in an suboptimal part of the track here to keep themselves ahead of them. So while Bladewolf's going to have to fight themselves around not 1 but 2 cars in 2 different classes, 1 in gold and 1 in national. So this is going to be giving all of the advantage currently in Oraz Vobes' court here. So this is going to be down to just Oraz Vobes' race to lose here. So with 80 minutes to go here, I think they just need to bring the car home. But because even if Elias Flynn is going to be getting much more pace out of them and getting past the Ginetta of Oraz Vobes ahead of them, they still have 1 more car between themselves and Nico and Bladewolf Kagagi here. So it's going to be probably just them trying to just bring the car home at this point.
Absolutely, and I think right now, for the most part, this sits in Oraz Vobes' hand to keep the car alive for the rest of the race, as you mentioned. Bladewolf Kagaki has closed that gap up to 4/10 of a second here. Looks like they gained another further 2, maybe almost 3 tenths onto Oraz Vobes in front. Again, they have to get past this Blue Mercedes here. Sitting at about 4 tenths back, the opportunity is still about there, but the engines in the front of these cars are almost identical compared to each other, so it's going to be very, very hard for the 142 to get its way past on pure power. It is going to have to be probably a bit of an argy-bargy move, a very elbows out move to get past the roadblock that is Nico Lopez right now. Not to say anything about their pace, but at least how Bladewolf will perceive them in terms of their championship challenge here. And it is quite a significant one because Nico Lopez does seem to be showing quite good pace. They were closing up on this gaggle of cars when Bladewolf was leading the train, and it means now that Bladewolf needs to push past them and also make that gap back up to Elias Flynn. very, very hard challenge here. We see the pace, though. Every lap that we tick by, it's a good opportunity to get a reference point. But 116, well, about 16 minutes left in this final race of the season. That time ticks away very, very quickly, and the first 45 minutes are already gone faster than a blink of an eye, and now we have to get through the last 15 minutes. That time is pretty much another blink, and you're done with this season.
Somebody who's been driving much faster than you can blink, that's going to be Elias Flynn, who has now caught up to the bumper of Horace Lopez here. Their last lap time for Elias Flynn was a 36.9, with Horace Lopez only able to get a 37.4 here. So perhaps those old tires are going to be starting to finally wear out on the Ginetta here. They're now going to be under threat from that big, beefy, roaring Chevrolet Camaro right behind them, now going down to that Klein chicane corner here with Elias Flynn. Only a 3/10 of a second here down, almost touching into that Ginetta rear bumper here. And with the Chevrolet having a much better engine, better straight line speed advantage on the Ginetta here, this could be a good opportunity for Elias Flynn to not only mess with Horace's brain. In fact, that's going to be Horace trying to make a defensive move into that chicane here, forcing Elias Flynn to back out from that challenge here. So the more of these fights here, that's going to be another potential possibility for Blade Wolf to catch up and hopefully get back into this fight here. And again, it's going to be the Chevrolet just clawing that gap right back up again, going into the turn 8 hairpin here with that tiny left-right kink here of turn 9 here before the final chicane here. So this seems like the fight has now relit, and that's going to be now Horace Lopez feeling the pressure not only of Elias Flynn, but of his incumbent silver champion title contender right behind them.
Of course, and of course that pressure goes on if Elias maybe makes some kind of contact with Horace here. So if I'm Horace and I'm seeing this challenge come in, you don't really want to fight it that much, as you see a little bit of zigging and zagging, a little bit of a weave coming from Inigo Lopez back there. But it looks like actually that they have vied to stay out of the way of this silver championship battle. So a little bit of sportsmanship, gentlemanness with the way that they're conducting themselves around this championship battle, as the 142 has now been released to chase down Elias Flynn. Gap sits about 0.2 of a second of a gain from Blade Wolf Kagakio to the rear end of Elias Flynn. But at 4 seconds, you need probably about, you need 8 laps. More than that, you need probably about 20 laps to close that gap at that kind of a gain. So right now, it looks like Blade Wolf needs to be gaining about half a second a lap for the rest of this race. And the only opportunity I think that could come true is if Elias Flynn starts sending this on Horace Lopez, or if Blade Wolf finds another couple tenths in that car, because it does look like Horace Lopez is starting to fall off with that tire wear. Their lap times have dropped from about 37 flats. They're about 37.7 now, or 37.5 now, and it could be a bit of an opportunity, a bit of an open door for Elias Flynn, who has started to benefit a little bit more.
It also seems like Elias Flynn is able to extract a little bit more pace out of those one tires, because again, neither Horace Lopez or Elias Flynn opted to put on new tires in the pit stop cycle here. So they're going to be sitting at about equal tire performance here, but it seems like Elias Flynn has been able to nurse those tires a little bit better. Again, just inching themselves a little bit closer to Horace Lopez here. But now with Blade Wolf Kagakio has cleared Inigo Lopez here, they're going to be sitting in clean here, so they're just going to be going now across the finish line with the first time just in full pace here. And in fact, they just got a 37.1 here, so they're gaining a bit more time now with nobody else in front of them to fight at the moment here. And with Inigo Lopez right behind them, I think Inigo Lopez just might be getting a bucket of popcorn at this point, just waiting to see the fight that's going to develop in the next couple laps.
Truthfully, if I was in the position of Nigo, I'd be doing the exact same thing. You get the best seat in the house if you can sit on the rear wing of Blade Wolf and just watch what happens as the culmination of this entire season, this championship, comes to a close. But Blade Wolf, yeah, sitting at about a it looks like 137.1. It's a good run, but actually Horace Lopez at a 136.9 on that lap. So it was a very, very strong time from Horace to blitz the leaderboards. So even though Blade Wolf has set one of their fastest times of the race equal with their personal best by about a tenth, it wasn't enough to close the gap to Horace Lopez, who is currently their best lap time, sitting about 0.3 faster than Blade Wolf. So the ultimate pace from this 406 is there. It's just a matter of Blade Wolf's able to hang on, but I think we might start seeing a trend of this Aston Martin falling back a little bit. Looking at those deltas, it looks like Blade Wolf's might be starting to fade through this latter part of the stint. The tires might be burning up again like we saw in that first stint.
Those tires on the Aston Martin must be incredibly hungry, because in the same time that the Aston Martin has two sets of tires here. Oras Lopez is still chugging along strong with that single set of tires here. Again, setting another 37 flat lap time here with now Blade of Kagekio crossing the finish line. We're going to be watching very closely what kind of lap time they're going to be getting. It's going to be 37.3. They're actually slower than Oras Lopez on the fresher rubber here. It seems like the Aston Martin just is an absolute hog for some vulcanized rubber on those Pirellis here, because they're just not getting anything. In fact, the gap has now increased to about 5 seconds, almost 6 seconds now to Oras Lopez here. So with only 11 minutes left of the race left to go here, there's not going to be many more chances. I think the entire championship fight is going to be hinging on if Elias Wind is going to be able to have a big fight with Oras Lopez here, which is going to be giving Blade Wolf the opportunity to close the gap again.
Absolutely, and it's interesting to think, though, that if Elias will get themselves involved with that, and even if they do, if Blade Wolf has the life in this rubber to make it happen, because now we're looking at the point where I'm not 100% certain that Aston Martin is going to carry itself the same as the Ginetta through the corners, to the point that power is going to actually be an advantage. I think that power might be the only thing that is keeping that Aston Martin in with a shout to get a pass or get on level with this Ginetta. It doesn't look like the Aston Martin has much more to give in the corners. It's starting to struggle, become a little bit more lumbersome, and it just doesn't look the happiest when we get a glimpse of it as well. But Elias Flynn in that Camaro is also looking to get their first overall podium here as one of the national drivers to get a charge past this 406. So a big result that is waiting for them if they're able to sneak past the 406. I'm just not 100% certain how everyone wants to handle this here. Whereas Volpez 137.5 on this time by Blade of Kagekio 137.6.
Yeah, absolutely. Oras Lopez is just flying in that Ginetta at the moment here, just getting away from Blade of Kagekio as fast as possible here. But also Elias Flynn is not seeming to care about this fight between Blade and Oras Lopez at all here. They're just looking for that overall podium here. We're seeing a lapped car here. I think that's going to be either Jax Wilson or George Strami right ahead of them. That's going to be putting a bit of a spatter in the works for both Elias and Oras here, going into that big set into the chicane. That's going to be Elias very, very deep. That's going to be then all the gravel here. That's going to be giving a better opportunity. That's going to be now Oras no more under threat from anybody. So a critical mistake, a bit too deep. I think they had a tire on the grass there that just caused them to completely miss the braking point. That could be another crucial moment. The crucial moment for Oras to just get away from everything and just clinch this title.
Yeah, it was the last bit of pressure that just got released from Oras Lopez. Now that gap sits about 3.5 seconds, and I don't think Elias Flynn had the pace to close that gap back up. I think they have the pace that maybe Blade Wolf needed as we roll into the Kleiner chicane. I think you're right, though. Just drop the tire onto the right-hand side of the track here, losing a little bit of braking performance, just a little bit. Oh, and just trying to dodge past. I think they were caught out by the Ginetta slowing down a little bit extra, just leaving some space to the traffic car in front. And then, unfortunately, had to take to the runoff there and lose a little bit of extra time. But still well done by the Camaro to keep it out of the rear end of one of the championship contenders. That would have been the absolute worst way for any championship like this to have been decided. Of course, it still does hurt their overall lap time and their gap to the leader and Oras as well, but I think everyone would much rather a little bit of gravel on track than a broken Ginetta on the side of the road.
Yes, we want all of our cars to finish this race in one piece, so good job on them for avoiding any bigger incidents here. But something that's also going to be ramping up again, that's going to be the fight between Nico Lopez and Blade of Kagekio here, because I feel like Nico Lopez is going to be running out of patience here. I think because they realize that there's not going to be much of a fight happening between Blade Wolf and Oras Lopez here. They're just deciding to just, again, relight the engine on that Mercedes, just unleash the power of that shorty car there and get past the other blue-colored Aston Martin ahead of them. So this could be another spanner in the works for Blade of Kagekio. So with less than 10 minutes to go here, the desperation is probably going to be setting in here. There's going to be not many more opportunities for Blade Wolf to try and get back up to their competitor up in silver, sitting in P3 again with the previous lap times here. Blade of Kagekio got a 38 flat with those tires here. So I'm not quite sure how hungry that Aston Martin is, but they're just chewing through those rubbers like nothing.
Absolutely, of course, though. Blade Wolf had Elias rejoin in front of them, albeit by a second in front of them, but it still could have startled them, put them off as they saw what was going on. But Horace Volpez also dropped to a 37.9 on that lap, so traffic could have played a part. Could also be this track is ramping up. Although that being said, Luis Alfonso set a 36.4, so the Mercedes all the way at the front of the pack, not struggling at all with a very, very strong lap time. Blade Wolf Kagakio this time by a 37.4. So I do think that the traffic played a little bit of a part. But actually, speaking of our two championship protagonists being completely inseparable, they both set an identical 37.487 lap time this time by. So just kind of inseparable, even when they have a little bit of a gap on the track.
Inseparable in lap times, but that is not what Blade Wolf Kagagia wants. They want to be faster, and currently they are not fast despite the pressure rubber they have on that Aston Martin here. So it's going to be advantage Horace Volpez now going down to that Clyde chicane here with no pressure from front, from back here. So it's just going to be the last 6 minutes. Almost went past 6 to 1 second mark here, unfortunately. So yeah, it's going to be just the final 6 minutes of the race left to go here, with nobody really fighting anybody at the moment here, besides the battle between Inigo Lopez and Blade Wolf Kagagia here. So also, something also to mention, that's going to be Tyler Van Beek has lost about 10 seconds behind on Luis Alfonso here, so it's looking to be very much a locked out P1 and P2 for Luis Alfonso and Tyler Van Beek, both of them securing themselves the overall and the gold championship titles respectively. But it's still going to be something potentially happening here in the last 5 minutes with Horace Volpez here. There could be those, we've seen those big last minute dives here. We saw that in Imola, so we could see those last minute mistakes again happening in the final round as well.
Especially, too, we still are at Zolder. We are running on ACC. It doesn't like curbs that much, and specifically the Kleines Carousel, making a quick trip over to Nürburgring. But no, the Kleine chicane, it has a tendency to buck the rear end of the cars if not taken perfectly. Very easy to get a spin that loses you 5+ seconds, or if you're even unlucky enough to have the nose facing the wall and not want to back up into traffic, you could lose 10-15 seconds waiting for that gap. So I don't want to say that this race is all but over because of the fact that there's very easy opportunities to spin out the car here, especially with the way that suspension is handled in this sim and making it so it's a little bit more difficult for these cars to run their way through the chicanes. So any opportunity to cause an incident, I am sure will be taken. These GT4s are, of course, quite strong at taking the bumps and the curbs, but I've seen it happen way too often that the rear end just catches it a little bit too wrong and around the car goes.
Something that I also noticed in the last lap, that's going to be Horace Volpez with a 37.9 with the lap time here. So they are having a couple of mistakes on the laps there. That's going to be causing them to slow down, lose some more time here. Blade Wolf Kagagia actually got themselves a 37 flat compared to Horace Volpez at 38 flat. There's pressure mounting on yourself and just making those critical blunders here, just trying to push the absolute maximum out of the car here. So somebody who's not feeling the pressure, however, that's going to be Luis Alfonso here, sitting over 11 seconds again. And actually, I'm not quite sure why Elias Williams went back to the pit lane here. Perhaps an issue with the tires or running out of fuel here, but yeah, that's going to be one more car out of the way between Blade Wolf and Horace here. So there technically is a chance for them to get back into a fight here, but I feel like unless Horace Volpez just loses their focus, goes into that zone out state with nobody really fighting, I think that's going to be Horace Volpez now just cruising to the end.
Yeah, I think Elias maybe took a little bit too little fuel. That's the only reason you would come in for a pit stop here. They go through. It could even be some kind of drive-through opportunity because it looks like it was a very, very short time in the pit lanes here. So actually a drive-through seems most likely. So track limits is actually another thing that we haven't talked about here. We do a lot of track cutting using all the curbs, so it could open up an opportunity, and that would surely be more than a 5-second time loss. We saw that the Elias was only about 1.5 seconds in front of Blade Wolf Kagakio, and right now they've dropped all the ways to about 30 seconds back from that position. So that could be a championship deciding mistake here. Of course, only about 2-3 laps left, depending when Luis Alfonso crosses the line here. But that's another threat that we haven't really mentioned. And it looked like a very, very big track cut from Horace Volpez. So paying no mind to the risk of a off-track penalty as we roll through here. And I believe one of our Aston Martins is stepping out of the way for this battle with 77 and George Shirami. So it is going to be a good run out of the hairpin for the 77. George Shirami going a little bit deep and losing a little bit of exit speed as well as we head to that final chicane. Not close enough for the big American GT4, but it looks like the Aston Martin in front is also struggling on its tires. It looks like a little bit more sliding and skittering across the track surface. So I think the Aston Martin really just dealing with a mechanical disadvantage of tire wear on this very tight and tricky Zolder circuit.
I also see all my relatives here that Orswap has just invalidated their last lap time here, so they are definitely violating those track limits here. We're not quite sure how many track limits violations they have, if they have any, because it does not necessarily guarantee that if you go off track that you also get a track limit violation here. But if we get up to 3, that's going to drive-through penalty. That's absolutely the last thing you want, with only 60 seconds left of the race to go here. Elias been having a big off-track moment here on the exit of turn 4 chicane here, with now Luis Alfonso crossing the finish line one last time here for that final lap of the track here. And there's just been nothing challenging them this entire race, almost the entire season here. They had some fights here early on in the season with the likes of RK, with I think it was Grimlith and also all those other people here, with all of them just dropping out of the fight one by one. That's going to be a dominant lockout for Luis Alfonso with one lap to go.
Absolutely. We saw the likes of Simone, who's a very, very strong rally driver that has come in and really shown that they were happy to be on a home turf. And outside of that, Luis Alfonso has had very limited challenge running through this championship, putting together an extremely strong championship run. And as they have to make the final run through turn 7 here, one more run through the quadruple apex turn 7. I really don't agree this is just one turn. I mean, I count 4, but to each their own. I think at the end of this, though, Luis Alfonso is going to be counting 4 overall wins in this championship as we roll through the hairpin for the final time. And it's going to be a very happy day for the 57 Bluey driver.
Looking very happy indeed for the 57 Blue driver and for the number 84 Cabal driver, Tyler Van Beek here. They were not really able to mount the challenge to Luis Alfonso in the end, but they're going to be sitting at a very dominant P2 here overall. P1 in gold class, that's going to be locking them out for the win. And that's going to be the now win for Luis Alfonso, our 4th GT4 Season 4 Championship title winner here. Crossing the finish line one last time here, a bit of a wiggle and a flash of headlights here. Congratulations to them. It's going to be shortly joined by Tyler Van Beek right in the background there. And looking further behind, there's not going to be any changes in position here. In fact, the gap between Blade Wolf and Oras has shrunken quite a bit here, but that's not going to be enough time for any of them to make any changes happening. So that's going to be now Oras Lopez, that final chicane through the turn 10 corner complex here. Gentle on the car here. There's no track limit violations, no drive-through penalties. That's going to be Oras Lopez, our silver championship title contender, title winner, title holder now. So well-fought race from all of our competitors in gold, silver, and overall.
Absolutely, and if you look at our standings in P1, 2, and 3, you have each championship that has been decided. Luis Alfonso taking the overall at the front, Tyler Van Beek taking the gold championship in P2 there, and Oras Volpez taking that silver championship in P3. So happy days for all 3 of our championship winners, to say the least, at the end of this championship. Everyone on the podium is going to be getting a little bit of an extra trophy, of course, and then a reminder that our AM championship winner, of course, was going to be Frey Fireblood, who took that championship from last season. But Luis Alfonso, your season 4 champion, the 57, proving a very dominant effort, and Luis Alfonso finally taking that overall championship that they have been so desperately yearning for.
Yeah, they've taken a couple of victory donuts around the track as well here. A very well-deserved race for sure. And they definitely worked for it. It was not a clear-cut win for them in the end. It was just down to their other competitors just opting to... perhaps they were a little bit scared of the Dragon there in the end, opting to not fight for the title in the end, which gave Luis Alfonso the opportunity to win them again, just doing a lot of spins on the track here. A good celebration for sure, and very classic for all of our 2 contenders here. And that's going to be bringing a final conclusion to a very exciting GT4 Season 4 race. It's something we're definitely going to have to do again here, because these GT4s, no matter what, always prove to be bringing us a lot of excellent racing.
Absolutely, and they have proved to put some absolute bangers out on track. We saw it happen multiple times, the Bathurst race, and this is definitely one I won't forget. And of course, Imola all the way to the end, last lap battles, last lap sends, last corner sends, even across literally every single class, proved to be a very, very good championship to roll through, and it's definitely one that I'm going to remember and miss now that we have finally closed the door on the final chapter of this GT4 season.
The chapter has been closed on GT4s, but we do have one more chapter opening in ARCA cars. As we announced last week, in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be having the debut of our ARCA Velocity Tour Challenge in the iRacing ARCA cars here. So make sure, if you have iRacing, go join us for that series here. And we also have one more announcement to have a bit of a small announcement, because we do also have a website now fully functional. Simufur.com is now a fully functional website that you can go to. You can have all of our socials there. There's not much else at the moment here, but if you want to be sharing to your buddies, or on mobile or on desktop, what we do here, just get them over to simufur.com.
Yes, and for one final time, we finally bring the Simufur GT4 season to a close, to a great season on ACC. Always nice to be back, and a great challenge from GT4. We have to say thank you to everyone that has come out to our season. Of course, follow our socials out on Blue Sky and join our Discord for the next championship to come. But until then, thank you, everyone, and good night.
Yep, good night, everybody. Make sure to watch us again for our next series here in iRacing in Le Mans. But no matter where you are, thank you, everybody, and see you soon, very, very soon.